Welcome to the Cycle World Podcast. We hope you're back. If you're new, double welcome. I'm Mark Hoyer. I'm the editor-in-chief. I'm with Kevin Cameron, our technical editor. He's seen a few things and he's thought about it more. This week's topic is pretty straightforward. The question is, are hybrid motorcycles dumb?
That's a good question for you.
It is a good question. And the reason we're bringing this up is that at EICMA, this Chinese company called Benda, who's been doing some interesting things as if they're possibly partly independent from the market, or I don't know, their designs are unusual and interesting, but they have some like regular cruisers and they're apparently getting into snowmobiles, all this. But what they showed was a 250cc flat twin with a hybrid powertrain. So it had an electric motor, flat twin, little cylinder wings out like your BMWs or your Douglases,
Yes.
if you're one of those older folks, or your Velocet Valiant. Is that a drink? I don't know. Go ahead and try Velocet Valiant. They had the little flat twin, lovely little design. So here's their bike, and it's the swing arm's unusual. The rear axle area is like 3 to 4 inches in diameter, where the rear axle carriers. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but technically, the question is, why are they making a hybrid? Does that make sense for motorcycles? Does it make sense to put two powertrains in and build this motorcycle? We've joked in the past, like, I have a Honda EU 2200i generator. It's whisper quiet. It weighs 50 pounds. We were going to make a backpack and put it on our test rider and then try to make a hybrid, a hybrid zero, and just wear the backpack. We were even going to do it just for photos and have an extension cord going into the bike. It couldn't charge and roll, as far as I know. I don't think it could make power while it's charging the battery, but it was a charming thought for the day.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, what do we do about this?
Well, first of all, the inspiration for this comes from hybrid automobiles, which are not dumb. Hybrid automobiles address one of the many shortcomings of the internal combustion engine, which is that its fuel consumption curve of load versus RPM is bucket-shaped, is U-shaped. Its fuel consumption is high at low throttle. It's at a minimum in sort of the mid-range, and as RPM rises, so does friction. So you have to burn extra fuel to overcome that friction. So fuel consumption in terms of pounds of fuel per horsepower per hour increases.
And at the low end, it's a pumping loss, right?
Yes, pumping loss because the throttle is open very slightly.
Yeah.
And this effect is what Charles Lindbergh taught U.S. pilots in World War II. If you are worried that you're not going to make base on return, run your engine at the largest possible throttle setting at low RPM and with propeller pitch to suit, so that you're basically on a very high gear ratio, like you were in a car, to pull the RPM down. It's like overdrive. Overdrive pulls engine RPM down. It extends range because lower RPM translates to less friction. So in a car, there are laws requiring cars to improve their fuel consumption. And of course, this dates back originally to the days when we were importing vast amounts of oil from Saudi Arabia. Today, the U.S. supposedly is a net exporter of petroleum. So that no longer applies. Today, we're worried about burning fuel because it puts carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. There are many cars. Here in the U.S., there are some 280 million cars that are registered. I'm not talking about those that are sitting in piles waiting to become import cars. But it makes sense to build a hybrid automobile if you're concerned about range and about reducing fuel consumption, because a hybrid auto can do both. I noticed with my little Korean import that I get over 40 miles per gallon on the interstate, but driving 2-lane roads, I get between 26 and 32. So even though the speed is lower, the fuel consumption is higher because I'm in the rising parts of the fuel consumption curve. And so what a hybrid does is it cuts in the electric motor and battery to drive the car when the internal combustion engine would be operating at low throttle, low speed. And this makes perfect sense, because if you're in stop and go traffic, if you're moving through the supermarket parking lot and trying to not bump into anything, it makes sense to have electric power, because the internal combustion engine would be burning fuel to overcome its pumping loss. So because cars are so numerous, because they use a significant amount of fuel, and because there are laws motivating auto manufacturers to reduce fuel consumption, hybrids make excellent sense as automobiles. On the other hand, there are no such laws pushing motorcycles to reduce their fuel consumption, because motorcycles are much less numerous than cars, and each motorcycle tends to use less, not in every case, but in many cases, less than an automobile. So why would Benda build this machine? Well, a lot of what goes to EICMA these days, when nobody knows where to stack their chips on today's playing board,
Yes, indeed.
it makes better sense to show prototypes. And that's what we have here. The little flat twin is 250 cc's. It's 53 and a half by 55 millimeters, and makes 25 horsepower and 25.5 newton meters of torque. So it moves right along. But it's basically a putt-putt. It's a utility motorcycle. Then you add an electric motor, which in some photographs is hanging underneath the engine, pointing forward. In some other places, it shows it actually on the crankshaft and so forth. There are a lot of ways to do this. Concentric drive it makes sense, because then you have the engine's crankshaft, the electric motor, which is also the starter, which is also the generator.
Yeah, that's a feature of the Honda Goldwing. Not that they're using it as a hybrid, but the charging system in the starter is one, and it's concentric to the crank. And so when you start it, man, it's amazing. It's not like it's not throwing a gear on a flywheel and going, "Meow, meow, meow, meow." It just goes bang, because it's just right there, and it just hucks the motor around and it lights up, and then it starts to be, its generating function. And it would be not a big extension to say enlarge this and get a bigger battery, and then suddenly you have a hybrid Goldwing.
Now, they claim the weight of this Benda 250 is 392 pounds. That means that the battery is really quite small. It might weigh 15 pounds. It might weigh a little more. I'm not sure, because there is some extra weight associated with building a hybrid. In an automobile, which is a living room suite on wheels with one or more engine motors to drive it, weight is a smaller consideration.
Yeah, and particularly for the non-enthusiast, the weight is not, when you have a person buying an electric car who doesn't, they don't think about their vehicle in the way that an enthusiast thinks about their vehicle. They get into a 5,000 pound, 6,000 pound electric vehicle, or take the Hummer, which weighed 10,000 pounds.
Yep.
Full electric Hummer, 10,000 pounds. Is this how we're saving the world? But people don't notice, and you can make the whole bottom of the car just a giant pack of batteries. And that's, our challenge with the motorcycle is we can't have a 800 pound. We can, but we don't want any 800-pound
Yeah.
battery motorcycle. We get up to
Well,
about 550 and you start to really feel it,
no, no question.
when you're picking
No
up
question.
an electric motorcycle.
So, as a prototype, I think the Benda 250 is very interesting because I have wondered for a long time whether a gasoline electric drive would make some kind of sense in certain applications. By this, I mean the electric motor only drives the wheels. The gasoline or diesel engine drives the generator. And this is how American diesel locomotives operate. The engine just sits there running at a constant speed that is safe for its long, whippy crankshaft. And the motorman up in the cab, the engineer moves the throttle to accelerate the train. And current is sent to the traction motors under the locomotive, and it moves off with ponderous grace.
Right, and the generator's designed to run at an optimal RPM and load.
Yeah.
And so it's going to make its maximum amount of charging when it needs to do that, and when it doesn't, it doesn't.
Back when diesel submarines were the rule, there were a lot of crankshaft failures because they coupled the diesel directly to the propeller for surface operation. And to make the engine small and light enough to fit inside of a submarine's hull, it ended up with a crankshaft that had some torsional problems. So they broke a lot of crankshafts because the officers who were promoted to be submarine captains were not perhaps constantly thinking about, is this a safe speed for my crankshaft? Let me look it up. And so they switched to diesel electric drive for that reason. The engine was coupled to generator, not to the propeller. Only the electric motor is connected to the propeller.
Well, consider the varying loads and, on a propeller and cavitation
Certainly.
and waves and all that confusing business. And then you got a captain who has no mechanical sympathy. It's like a pilot who doesn't understand how the plane works. There's plenty of them, I'm sure, but how much better a pilot would you be if you understood all the systems of your aircraft as much as you could?
Yep.
Makes a difference. So shame on you, Captain Submarine Crankshaft Breaker.
There were quite a few of them, but diesel electric drive has been routine for 100 years. Well, nearly for submarines, and certainly close to that for locomotives, rail locomotives.
I mean, when did the last steam locomotive just stop puffing along? I mean, a diesel electric just would have been a massive improvement.
Oh, in fuel consumption and everything else.
Yeah.
And also you didn't have to stop every little whip stitch to get another tank of water because the steam exhaust from the cylinders was used to drive the draft through the fire. It wasn't sent to a condenser and then pumped as water back into the boiler.
Right, which is a way
system.
that some closed systems do operate.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Probably put some beautifully pure water in there that is not non-corrosive and doesn't have nasty minerals building up on things.
Here's another thing that can be an advantage in the case of a hybrid, particularly if it's designed for it, is that the internal combustion engine and the electric motor can cooperate. So if the IC engine makes 80 horsepower and the electric motor has a momentary, that is before it overheats, burst power of 200 horsepower, you could have very spirited acceleration one or two times. And then the engine would have to charge the battery back up because the battery can't, you can't carry two completely different power systems. If you're doing a hybrid, you've got a moderate sized battery. In a Prius, I think it weighs 150 pounds, and you can't go far on it as battery alone. But in a Tesla, the battery might weigh, 1,200 pounds for the 88 kilowatt hour. And it's actually it's built as a tray. It's part of the frame. Um, so the excitement factor could be a plus for a hybrid in that little 25 horsepower motor, chuck, 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 chuck. Suddenly a mighty hum is heard and the thing shoots forward. And the fellow on the 20-year-old Sportster is embarrassed. Um, this is a goal for some of us. But I think what Benda are doing here is they built it for their own instruction, and they built it to see what the market response would be, both of which are well worth doing. And I keep thinking about an electric drive motor for a MotoGP bike, because it is not a trivial thing to match the torque from an internal combustion engine to the grip available from a rear tire whose camber angle is constantly changing, and track conditions are changing, and all these different things are changing.
RPM is constantly changing. And
yes,
let's talk about how elastic. I mean, when you're trying to control rear wheel slip, because what are you asking for at the throttle? Is the rider, you're saying, I need this amount of torque. I need this torque. If I'm coming, if I'm driving off the corner on an M1000 RR, and all of my traction control and everything is turned on, and I'm ready to go, and I pull that trigger, I'm going, I need the most, and I need some slip, but not too much slip. And to do that manually, you got to have a hocus pocus in your wrist, and you need a torque curve, a natural power torque curve that is predictable for my human brain.
Yep.
With MotoGP, what are they doing? They're fluttering the throttle butterfly. They're altering the spark for sure. They have
the spark timing. Yep.
Spark timing. They're doing all of these things to artificially smooth out this, whatever their 200 and beyond horsepower outputs are, and the torque rating, and giving the rider what they want. And what Kevin's explaining is, if it's an electric motor, it is a rheostat. That's it. You want traction control, like it's just a little bit, some code.
Just a moment. I'll have it for you.
Right. It doesn't have to be. I ask this. I'm reading the tire. What's my camber angle? What's the traction on the track? Like all of this hocus pocus that has to happen in between that in milliseconds, and then go to control the engine, and then try to trace this perfect torque line.
So if it magically became possible for an engine coupled to a generator to be supplying the battery, or the battery and the traction motor, it sounds heavy to me. It sounds like, no, probably not a good idea. But conceptually, the idea of modulating motor torque to suit traction conditions, I think it would be much easier to do electrically.
Well,
because the basis of an electric motor is pretty linear.
Well, imagine having a small enough electric motor and a small enough battery so that when you are entering a corner, you're on electric, and you're essentially kind of decoupling the engine braking, right? And maybe you're getting a little bit of engine braking to charge. I don't know if you need that, but what I'm getting at is a small enough motor so that when you're in the corner and you're modulating the throttle for that perfect amount of edge grip,
yep,
the electric motor is acting perfectly, and the big guy is going da, 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 da. And then as you roll in, it's electric motor, and then you pick up and then light the fire on your V4 and smoke the tire and charge the battery and get ready for the next corner.
Be gone. Yes. So it a lot depends on what you would expect from a hybrid motorcycle.
I think Yamaha's calling, and they want to patent my idea for electric corner exit control. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes.
Oh, sure.
I'll see if I can get residuals on that. Now, a hybrid drive would make sense if motorcycle fuel consumption came under government restriction. That's one thing. If gasoline became $12 a gallon, as it is in some parts of the world, we would we'd be making a different law for the use of fuel. That's one case. In another case, the presence of the electric motor adds zest to a pedestrian 25 horsepower putt-putt around town and makes it more fun to ride. That would be good. And these are the combination of an electric motor / generator, which is either adding or subtracting torque from the constantly varying torque of an internal combustion engine. As the RPM rises, for example, you will get an increasing torque from the fact that the intake valves are kept open after bottom center. Oh, now the airbox is chiming in. We're going to have 500 RPM of pretty good little bump here in the torque. And now here's the length of the intake. That's chiming in. And we have the exhaust pumping. These things have to be added up in such a way that it gives us usable, safe to apply torque that doesn't have a sudden spike in the middle of it that sends you into the gravel. So I like the controllability of the electric motor. There are a lot of ways that it could be applied. That could be called hybrids.
Well, after dynoing many motorcycles and looking at many dyno charts on our in-house Dynojet 250i dynamometer, I have to shout out to Honda for, I mean, what are we trying to do with an internal combustion engine but replicate the torque of an electric motor? Like, that's what we're looking for on most street bikes, especially now with emissions controls and a lot of the parallel twins and, you know, that kind of Euro 5 plus idea of not too much overlap, but open up the valves quick and all that. Honda does a really great job kind of across the board. The 300L dual sport bike, just a really nice torque. Everything that you go through when you dyno Honda, somebody spent a lot of time matching what you just described, resonance in the airbox and the length of the tailpipe and the header pipe. And
because these are all RPM or throttle angle dependent effects. So you want, if you're going to add them together, you don't want to add them up to a spike that's going to make you make the back end slide out when I thought I was just feeding power smoothly, and then I saw the pavement.
Yeah, so nicely done. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's nice to see that and I think about the Benda 25 horsepower and that flat twin, and I think, well, what if we just didn't lug around the battery and the electric motor? What kind of mileage would we get? You know, I mean, a Honda Trail 125, you know, we got a 55 mile with my ass on it. It's a 55 mile an hour bike, but it will return in real riding with me on it is 112 miles per gallon. That's pretty darn good. And it's fun. I mean, it's not roll into it fun, like Sportster fun or whatever, but it is good times and in its own way. And I think about a 25 horsepower flat twin, 380 pounds, that wouldn't be bad. I mean, I think it would have some pep and if you tuned it for it, but you're still going to get, you know, I mean, you're going to get 80 miles per gallon pretty easily. I mean, my WR250R Yamaha in its factory form, I have to beat on it. I mean, this is before I tuned it and put a pipe and stuff, but when it was factory, I'd have to beat on it to get less than 60 miles per gallon. Mm-hmm. So you're looking, if you a mildly tuned flat twin street bike, 80 miles per gallon, I think you'd have no problem. Adding hybrid, then what would we do? I can't imagine.
Well, this is let's look at another approach. If we imagine a draconian regime in Washington, D.C. that says the most important thing in the world is not to burn anything. So you want to roast marshmallows, you're going to have to use solar power, sun shining. In this case, the first thing that we would do would be to provide an overdrive ratio for a lot of more powerful motorcycles so that instead of humming down the road on your 600 four-cylinder at 8,000 RPM, you're humming at 5,000 RPM. You'd have to recam it. You'd have to give it a more Euro 5 torque curve for this. But by pulling back from higher RPM, you would be sliding down the high fuel consumption at higher RPM in our U-shaped curve down toward the bottom where the minimum is. So the first thing to do is to reduce engine RPM at cruise. And what they've done with cars to improve fuel consumption is to make them lighter, because so much car travel consists of, oh, the light screen, burp. Oh, now I have to put on the brakes, sit there, dum, 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 burp. And a heavy car is going to take more torque and more power to get it moving after the light turns green. And of course, you have to stop looking at your phone, which adds another delay. I think they should have that as a drag racing class, that you're conducting a phone call and the tree is coming down.
They actually design phone delay into timing of lights now for traffic.
I would believe it.
And boy, is that frustrating, particularly if you're on a motorcycle, because you're not really looking at your phone. You can mount your phone on your handlebars and you can look at it, but and there's plenty of guys. Like, I was in India and I'm watching guys riding in India with really loose fitting helmets, and the guy had his hand up inside of his helmet holding his phone, talking while he's riding in Indian traffic, that is a feat of bravery and skill. I mean, Indian traffic is something else. It's really something else, where the horn is a wear item.
Yes.
So, in any case.
So there are a lot of things that we would do initially before we adopted a hybrid. I think we could improve cruising fuel consumption quite a lot with an overdrive ratio. Not so hard to do. It provided that you're designing it into the next model rather than having to try to fit it into an existing transmission case. But that would be number one. Other things that the pumping loss thing, it's a great thing about diesels is that they operate on full throttle all the time. The intake air is not throttled on a diesel, so they don't have that problem.
Yeah, just explain the way they control the way the engine runs on a diesel for folks who are not familiar with that.
Yeah, what happens is it takes in a lung full of air and it compresses it roughly 16, 17 to 1. The air is hot. A diesel injector sprays fuel in, typically in 6 directions, radially. The combustion chamber is in the piston. There's a bowl in the piston. And the air in there is rotating. So the spray comes out in 3 installments. There's a first one to get it lit. It sprays in. It takes a moment for the droplets to warm up to the point that they burn. They're warming up from the heat of the compressed air. There's no spark plug.
The glow plug is there.
But that's for cold starting, yeah. And then once there's flame in the cylinder, they inject the first power injection, which then they go 1, 2, 3 with those injections. And during that time, the air in the bowl has rotated. So they're squirting fuel. They're trying to parcel out the fuel so that there is no underserved area and in the intake air. So it is called compression ignition, or CI, because the fuel is ignited by contact with air compressed so much that it's very hot. And because there is no throttling, the pressure during intake on top of the piston and below it is roughly the same, so no loss, or very little.
Yeah, so you're controlling the power output by how much fuel you're putting in the cylinder.
Yes, it's a variable delivery pump. Modern type is a spray that is turned on either by a solenoid or by a piezoelectric crystal, and it opens fully. There's no partially open. It opens, and then the computer counts off time. And then it's, that's enough, stop. And it stops injecting. That's how load control is accomplished in a diesel, and which is very different from spark ignition, in which we have some means of mixing air and fuel together before they enter the cylinder or shortly after they're entered the cylinder in the direct injection engines. These are spark ignition engines. There's no flame until the valves are closed, and it's time for the spark, which is usually somewhere around 35 degrees before top center. It takes a while for the pressure to rise, so that the fact that the spark is occurring before top dead center doesn't result in a large energy loss, because the little flame kernel is growing like a business startup. It doesn't have its elbows out yet. So there's not a lot of pressure rise by top dead center. And then you hope to get peak pressure 10 to 12 degrees after top dead center. And then you let that burned high pressure gas expand against the piston doing work on the crankshaft.
Right. And the efficiency of taking, if you take your Honda Goldwing of 1800 cc, you've got a vast surplus of power available to you. So when you're whispering down the highway, you are working against pumping loss because the engine is not particularly loaded. When you shrink it down to a 125 cc single, like in the trail, you're at wide open throttle almost all the time. It's life on a dyno. You're just really trying to zing along. And vintage cars, I think back to my MG Magnet, 1958 ZB Veritone, had a 1500 cc MG BMC engine, twin little carburetors, and it was life on a dyno. But that car got exceptionally good fuel mileage because it was designed to use a lot of throttle. It was sized so that the butterflies were open, and it was designed to be efficient doing that.
And this is why you will find that so many cars now being made have between 8 and 11 transmission speeds. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep the engine speed at a value that will require the throttle to be fairly far open. So in effect, it is controlled lugging. The way my mother instinctively drove cars dates back to 1920. But what they're doing with those, with all those extra transmission speeds, is they're trying to keep the engine operating at it close to its best specific fuel consumption. That is, pounds per horsepower per hour. Now, I was told, sitting in the office of Claudio Domenicali, presently CEO of Ducati, he said the ratio between the smallest fuel consumption of which a given engine is capable and the largest at which it might operate is 2.5 to 1, which is why I'm getting better mileage on the highway at 75 miles an hour than I am around 2-lane roads in my rural area on partial throttle. And this is something that could perfectly well work for motorcycles, which is why you would have an overdrive ratio, so that to reduce engine RPM at cruise. The other thing, of course, is that you would have to go to a psychology center to have your mind reprogrammed so that you didn't enjoy fun anymore and would stop that constant acceleration. What's the point of it? Just move with the flow like a good citizen.
Oh, it feels so good. Just having the right amount of torque on tap in the right gear, your 74 Norton Commando. Beautiful combustion chamber, nice pair of twin AMO Premiers.
Decent cooling.
Decent
of
cooling.
The cylinder head. Yeah.
Yep. Spark.
Big point.
Nice electronic ignition with a great ignition curve, and then you just roll in third gear, and it pulls. And it's not titanic amounts of torque, but it's a very nice amount of torque, and it surges you ahead. Even the old XS 650, you can I just short shift that thing and and I kind of rattle along, and it vibrates a lot if you rev it up. But also,
how many treatments have you had?
Zero. I'm negative treatments.
Yeah.
But it
I
feels good. You roll in on the XS and it starts to pep up, man. It really comes in strong and it makes a bark and you enjoy it. But I've been imprinted with that my entire life, you know?
Now I want to say something about my own obsolescence. Uh, when Harley Davidson designed the Pan America, I was filled with admiration because this was a departure. They were designing a different kind of engine for an application with which they were not familiar traditionally. And this is an engine that has received wide praise. But they designed the engine to look like a boombox. Now, presumably, one side of the engine has the cam chains, and they are the cam chain covers or whatever they are. What's between what keeps us from seeing the cam chains has got a convoluted shape which has nothing whatever to do with what's inside. Now, that used to be important to me. The point is, my obsolescence prevents me from appreciating the question, why shouldn't the cam cover look like a boombox? Nobody knows what a cam chain is anymore, and they don't need to. So here I am with my outworn aesthetic, hoping that engines can still be designed to look like aluminum shrink wrapped onto the fascinating parts inside. Forget that stuff. That's just nonsense
I
because
suppose.
Honda has put a single-sided swing arm on a battery-operated motorcycle. Now, are they going to enter it in 24-hour races, which is why the single-sided swing arm was first invented? So you could change the rear wheel several times in 24 hours because you'd worn the tires down so much? No, because the single-sided swing arm has become a phoneme in the silent language of styling. Oh, we'll hit them with this and we'll combine it with that, and it's sort of like modern architecture. Well, why shouldn't doors be parallelograms that are canted off to you just have to walk through them at an angle? I can't think of a reason. Can you?
Well, you
Why
know,
we shouldn't walk around like 1920s comedy heroes?
well, in the murderous onslaught of social media, I recently saw a short video on architecture of this designed house somewhere. I wish I could remember, but social media has melted my brain. And but it's a very tall door. It's a door. It's a door that's 15 feet or something. And the door is closed, and the person opens the door, and the door is segmented. And as you pull it open, it waves open. Each segment follows the last.
Hmm.
Aesthetically, it's gorgeous. It's nonsense, but design matters. It makes you feel good. I think using the CF Moto, um, the RR, their kind of supposed MotoGP replica for the street superbike thing that they showed it. CF Moto, there they are, China. It's Kiska design. There's a reason that the bike looks the way it looks. But you look at that bike, and bing bang, it. Oh yeah, yeah. That makes that design says MotoGP, and that's the bike. That's what we as a consumer, even though we're not going MotoGP racing ourselves, we want a piece of that, and we have that feeling, and we watch those people be excellent on the track,
Be excellent. Yes.
and you think I could be that guy, and then you want to get that bike, because it speaks a certain language. M1000 RR, V4 Ducatis. I mean, they speak that language to us, just as many other things speak their own languages.
Now, I hearken back to the chopper. In the 1950s, motorcycle drag racing achieved a certain popularity. Little booklets were issued. I had one on how to soup up your 650 Triumph for drag racing. And what you had was a 4-inch wide Avon slick, a big, hefty tire, the engine all the way back against the tire, so its weight was adding traction. a spindly structure reaching out front with a raked out front end. Why raked out? Because the very limber motorcycle frames of the time, when they were drag raced or taken to Bonneville, they started to do things that made people's stomachs queasy. They weaved, they wobbled because they lacked basic stiffness. So raking the front end out was self-defense. Why put a brake on the front wheel when your goal is to go as fast as possible in 1,320 feet? People looked at these bikes and they said, man, that is cool. I dig that big tire. Look at that. That's just, I got to have one. And before you knew it, people were doing crazy things like raking the front end out so that the engine was tipped up like this. And to me, it looked crazy, but to the people who were doing it, that's cool, man.
Well, it is, and that's the thing about design and the
It flies off, but style flies off by itself because it's supported by our emotions
yes,
and our associations.
right. It's a feeling.
Yes.
It evokes a feeling. I mean, I've ridden many different kinds of choppers, and dynamically, nope. I mean, just absolutely everything wrong with it. Even like Sugar Bear, a Sugar Bear front end. Sugar Bear designed geometry to work, so the rake and everything and the offset, he made it work. And a Sugar Bear front end was great on a chopper, and even the best choppers still, everybody wants to reach down and jockey shift and all this crazy stuff, but it's an attitude and a feeling. That's what it's about. You park the bike and it has a certain kick on the kickstand. It's like it makes emotion. It makes emotional sense to us. It's a feeling, and that we seek that feeling depending on what our self-image is. Our primal expression of self-image that it drives so much in motorcycling.
Around the turn of the century, that is 20th to the 21st, just after, bikes began to be given the features of supersonic aircraft. Pointy shapes that don't work well at subsonic speeds, fake intakes that directed air to nothing that needed it, and all kinds of added on business. So it became, I felt validated when the first videos and photos from the Sepang test, the first real action in the MotoGP season, came in, because the bikes are in fairings they're mounted on, these bikes are black. They don't have any color on them, and they are smooth. They don't have sharp edges. They don't have zigzag. This is a stealth bike. See the zigzag? That means stealth. So I'm just an old stick in the mud who clings desperately to reality, or my impression of reality, when everyone else has been liberated. And they say, I like the way a single-sided swing arm looks, and I'm going to put one on my son's baby carriage. Well, yeah, why not?
Why not? There was the old lefty fork. Cannondale had a fork. It's not a fork. I don't know. It's a stick. But the front wheel was suspended on a horizontal axle, and they called it the lefty fork, and it just had one leg that went down.
Like a nose wheel on a tricycle gear airplane.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm thinking of now also, when you keep saying single-sided swing arm, and then things that didn't mean anything, or design choices that you made that you just decided to make. I think of the NR 750. The 1992 Honda NR 750 oval piston. I mean, that's a certain kind of mechanical insanity right there. But just the visual signature, little cat eye headlights, and then single-sided swing arm coming from, RC30 and endurance racing. It meant something. My VFR 750, single-sided swing arm. I gotta have it. Gear-driven cams? Why, yes, I'll take that. I'm just rattling to and from work, or sport riding, raging the twisties or whatever.
There used to be a game. Used to be a game in the paddock at AMA Superbike races. Who's got the gear drive kit on their cams? And you would hear this gear whine. Ah, I've got it. The gear whine has an aesthetic value because gears are the most positive way to drive camshafts. That's the way it used to be. Now, the sound of gears could be built into the sound system on your bike, and you could have any sound you like.
Well, I mean,
Why not?
the live wire, the first Harley Davidson live wire, they built a little whine into the drivetrain to give it kind of a turbine sound. That was them saying that going down the road, wee, getting that sound.
Yes.
But I want to go back to the NR before we get lost in cam drive sounds and fake noise coming out of things. Is that the NR 750 put the exhaust system in the tail section, which I can think of at least two really kind of dumb ways that doesn't make sense. And one is heat for the rider because your asses and other things are right there.
Yep.
And then moving the weight high into the back of the motorcycle away from the axis of rotation and all that.
Which is why now they're putting that stainless box up under the engine with everything in it, and then there's a pipe that comes out to let the smoke
hat
out.
tip to Eric Buell.
Yes, absolutely.
For putting dual outlet Chevy mufflers under his Harley motors all those years ago. I mean, honestly, Eric, good job.
Yeah.
But nonsense styling, and what did we see in '94 when the Ducati 916 came out? Little cat eye headlights and two exhaust pipes stuffed under the seat. And man, if you wanted to get hot, that's a place to take a ride. Is a 916, 996, 998. It's a good cooking.
Yamaha's 500 two-stroke street bike had a 42-pound exhaust system, and part of it was used to heat the seat. 42 pounds. I mean, imagine carrying a bag of horse grain, weighs 40 pounds. Just carry it around with you casually. Well, I just like, I have a nibble now and then. Hang that on your motorcycle. That's why I wept for joy when somebody handed me a titanium exhaust system for an inline four with the muffler or the collector.
Oh, it's like a bag of popcorn.
7 pounds. Yeah, it was like air. It was like an Aprilia 250 gas tank.
Many, many years ago, I got hauled through the Yamaha race shop, and it was just after it was kind of just after the crazy prototype era when they were just doing the insane two-stroke stuff, all this super factory, just zillions of dollars into these prototype supercross bikes. And they're like, no, come on, people. We can't, let's just regularize this a little bit. But he had an expansion chamber made out of titanium. And I'd never held a titanium pipe. This is way back. And he's like, here, check it out. And he throws it to me. And I have this image in my mind of how much I got to be ready to catch this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's less than a cardboard box. It's just, it's crazy for the size. Wonderful, wonderful stuff.
So we got off into this diversion because
hybrids are done. Let's get back to that.
We began talking about other ways to improve fuel consumption on motorcycles that we would probably do long before we built a hybrid. And one of them is to bring cruising RPM, freeway, our engine speed down. And that would be much easier now with these automated shifting systems that are coming into use, because then when you twisted the throttle, it would jump down 2 or 3 gears into the actual working part of the transmission. The engine would tack up and away you would go. But the rest of the time you'd be getting terrific mileage because the engine would just be...
The Honda Goldwing DCT has 7 gears.
And so it should.
And when you're in the tour mode, 7 gears, it's closing that spread ratio on the bottom, like 1, 2, 3. The first to sixth, or the first to top, is the same ratio spread on the manual, which is 6 gears, but they add that other gear down low to smooth out the speed differential of the gear change so that your RPM drops are smoother and it just feels nicer.
It doesn't go
But what
when
you
it
get
when it engages. Yeah.
when you're in that tour mode, when you're in the very chill, especially in the chill setting, and you're letting it do the automatic shifting, you're not, pulling triggers and messing about or giving it lots of throttle. When you whisper off the line on your 108 foot-pounds of torque at 1,000 RPM, you just roll in and that thing peels off the line and it goes click, 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 click. And by the time you're at the other side of the intersection, you're probably in fifth. And you're just down there. You're like at 1,200 RPM.
Yep.
And you have throttle and you are accelerating. So you are getting an efficient way of moving this, 800-pound touring bike with a 225-pound meat bag on it, wearing gear and a helmet and riding to lunch. So I that's all wonderful. I guess the next step in this conversation, in my mind, as I was doing some research for this very podcast about hybrids, etc., is I came across this company in Canada, and it doesn't have anything to do with motorcycles, but they're called Edison, and they're truck people. They self-proclaimed truck people building trucks for truckers, and they've built a big rig that has a Cat diesel generator and traction motors, electric motors, and they got these big rigs with like 3 drive wheels in the back, and they built logging truck prototypes, and I think they're still trying to get license plates on it, but they're a vehicle manufacturer. They're building essentially a Cat generator,
Absolutely,
and a big battery pack, and then a big rig. So it's a diesel electric train for the road, and they have a kit that you can invest in. I don't know if you can get the kit, but you can invest in the kit for your whatever pickup truck you want. They're making 2 axles, so you have a 4x4. You extract the drivetrain, you trash the transmission from your original truck, whether it's 6-speed, 5-speed, 4-speed, 10, whatever
you
it
won't
is.
need it now.
It's gone, so you're saving some weight. And then they slide this Cat generator deal into your powertrain power barn under the hood of your vehicle, and they stuff some batteries all over this, give you some batteries, and then the axles are the drive unit. So you have disc brakes, and they've got some incredibly high weight rating, and you bolt these things to your leaf springs. So you need straight axle type trucks. So you take your 94 Cummins Dodge and get rid of it and put this thing in there, and you're going to end up with like 800 something foot. I mean, the foot-pounds of torque from 0 RPM is insane. It's 4-wheel drive, and your little diesel generator just hums away, and you get all the benefits of diesel locomotion.
Ferdinand Porsche did this.
Did he?
100 years ago.
No.
He built electric road trains. There was a power car which had, just as you described, a powerful engine. It wasn't a diesel at that time, I think, driving a generator, and electric power was sent to all the wheels up and down the train. So it wasn't going to get stuck casually. It was going to be quite resistant to getting stuck. And the torque to the wheels could be well controlled. And there are historic photographs showing these Porsche electric hybrid trains operating. So and they had hub motors.
Oh, amazing.
So these ideas were out there waiting for higher temperature wire insulation, more efficient in diesel engines, all kinds of innovations yet to come. And so these people in Canada are saying, sure, let's do that. Take out your old axle, stand it on in the corner, and pretend it's a Christmas tree. Put all the presents around it and put the real deal under there, connect it to your leaf springs, and you are now a diesel electric. All the power going to the wheels is electric power.
Yeah, Dodge
diesel engine is there to make that electric power.
Sorry,
just as on a diesel submarine, just as on a diesel locomotive.
I said Dodge, but what I meant was Ram, because that's what they call
Yes,
their trucks.
that's what
They
they're
call it
called.
Ram, but Ram has got a prototype out there that does this very thing, and it seems very sensible for a truck. I mean, I drive around in a '89 Ford F-250 when the ignition system and and '89 electronics aren't messing with me. And I'm quite delighted to get 12 miles per gallon for my 400 pound-feet of torque. It's pretty nice, and it always gets that much. Like unless you hammer it, but it's 10, and I can haul 7,000 pounds, and it's pretty close to 10. It just doesn't seem to care that much.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense to do, a constant throttle. I'm generating, and then you're just asking for the electric motors to do the work. I mean, it just absolutely makes sense. If you are trying to haul, hey, you were trying to haul logs. That's what they show on the Edison website is big trucks
Yep.
hauling logs, and the weight. God, I don't know who they hired to build this thing. They're prototypes, but it's just like here's a big flat plane. It looks like a 50s truck. It's just like a giant slab in the front, and then it's slabs on the side of where the generator barn is, and then big windshield, and then it's got it's very industrial because the doors and the front cab and everything go down, and it's showing um you could see out to the ground, but where your feet are, and you're kind of in the middle. It's very cool industrial. It's very evocative of giant mining dozers and all these things. It's neat design language, certainly.
Yes. And who knows what's next? These things these are market probes. The Benda 250 flat twin is a market probe. It's also a tech probe. They're saying, let's play around with some of these components. How light can we make it? What kind of control systems that we haven't thought of might offer advantages we haven't considered? It's time to play.
Don't you think?
Play Play is activity that has no consequences. That is, you're not going to be punished for it. You're not going to get your hand in a trap. You're just trying different things. This
I don't
is
know.
what children do.
I really liked skateboarding. Vert skate ramps, 12-footers. I liked all that, and there was plenty of consequence.
Yeah, there's consequence.
But I totally agree. So the play idea. This is the thing that when I sit around and at home, I have a Honda EU 2200i. It's the little suitcase generator. I mentioned it before. It's is this a drinking game? I'm not sure yet. We'll hold tight, folks. But a little pull start generator, and gosh, it's like a half a gallon or something. It has a tiny little fuel tank, and that sucker will generate, run my fridge when the power's turned off and all that for, 8 hours. It just runs and runs, and it makes 2,200 watts. And I think, well, hasn't someone in Honda gone, hey, that only weighs 50 pounds and it makes 2,200 watts. How many watts if we put an electric motor on this little thing and we put that suitcase under the rider, it has to have happened. Don't you think someone at Honda has played with one of their little generators and basically a battery repository and a little hub electric motor? It has
just
to exist.
Like BMW's off-road riders in their experimental department were unleashed. They said, we need a new image, not the image of the professor emeritus touring Europe at 28 average miles per hour, but one of the joy of life. And what could be more joyful than setting off cross country on a motorbike? And so they created that R80 GS that just turned BMW in a fresh direction, and people liked it, and they still like it. So this is the value of play. You might learn something. You might come up with an idea that is the right idea at the right time, like BMW did. By unleashing those people. They were all a bunch of enduro riders, but they came to work to manufacture sober sensible motorcycles.
Yeah.
We're not having fun. We're doing things correctly. So
They did do that a long time, but they've somehow, I can't imagine the wrestling matches they must have got in, to come out with an S1000 double R
yep.
and to just say, no, we're putting a telescopic fork on it.
Yes, sir.
No, we're just going to do that. And then, oh, hey, by the way, look, check out this turn signal switch on the left handlebar. I don't, there's an entire generation of BMW rider who doesn't know and doesn't care that you used to push up on a button on your right hand to turn right, and you used to push up on a button to turn left on your left grip. Like Harley still has the push left, push right.
Yeah.
What I like about the button on the left is that if you push it to the left, it's to the left. You push it to the right, it's to the right. And no matter what you do, is if you push it in, it's doing nothing. Whereas automatic canceling turn signals on a Harley, you hit it and you're going and like, is it still on? I'm not sure if it's still on. I better hit it again. And you can definitely hit it again and it'll keep flashing if it's not, and it will keep flashing if it is. But to actually turn it off, what do you do? Hit them both? No, wait, that's hazards. Anyways. But the play idea, when you get, you take a company like Harley Davidson, they build a certain kind of product for a long time that they've sold, billions of dollars worth. And the whole brand around this idea of engineering kind of experience that their riders want. And the mass market, never mind that sales are a little rough right now. Over history, particularly from the 80s, massive amounts of sales and huge impact. And it's a certain kind of bike. It's a 45-degree V twin, potato, a lot of engineering going into it to make it do the thing that it should do for the rider. And then they, kind of got off on the technical bent, like, hey, we're going to compete in adventure bikes and we're going to change the Sportster and maybe we'll come out with a naked bike performance thing called the Bronx. But actually, no, we hit pause on that. But the whole backside of that company, there are plenty of guys who are very much cruiser people, hardcore. I want to ride long distances, take big touring on big V twins. But there's plenty of people in that company who road race.
Yes.
They road raced GSX-R 1000s. One of their key test riders, development guy on the XR 1200 and many other things, was a GSX-R 1000 racer, and his test riders were racers. This is hardcore. There's a guy in PR, Paul James. He's still supermotoing. He's about my age, and he's out there racing club supermoto because he's hardcore. All these guys. So it's it influences what your product can be.
So.
And so
So.
Yeah, no, the motorcycle can be like this. What if we just try that? Within our own design language, what if we design heavyweight cruisers at Indian and at Harley Davidson? What if we took a racing mindset to a lot of those parts? And what if we dropped 13 pounds off of each wheel? Like, I was so delighted when Victory motorcycles, probably about 10 years ago, 10 years ago, more than that now. Yikes. A long time ago, Victory was touting, they didn't do a ton of, I think, model work in this year, but they lightened all of their wheels and they put it in the press release. And I was like, mad respect to a cruiser company for doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's the weight discussion's barely in the room a lot of times. I think Harley on the latest Softail, they did a lot of work to bring that weight conversation in the room. And certainly on the adventure bike, the Pan America, they had a weight target. And in fact, part of that weight target was us calling them out and saying that if it weighs less than this, we'll buy pizza and beer for the PDC. And we did. We actually, they said, hey, we're hungry, because they came out with the specs, and sure enough, they hit that number. And they put that challenge up in the department and on the wall, like, hey, we'll buy you pizza and beer. And then they came in our comments and said, hey, we're hungry.
Yeah.
You made a promise. And so we did. We spent a lot of money and and went there and bought them pizza and beer. We actually got beer in the PDC, which was sort of a triumph, apparently. Sorry about that, triumph. In any case, well, that was hybrids. I think our hybrid's dumb. Not really. I mean, I think it's a great experiment. I think
Great experiment.
great experiment and rationally done. I mean, high five to Benda for coming out with something unusual and messing around with it. And
Mind you, it's a prototype at this point.
yeah, they have a larger displacement flat twin somewhere out there that's in the 700 range. So they're thinking about these things, and they're doing, I don't know where that sense of freedom's coming from, Benda, but well done. And thanks for showing it to us, because how many of these really interesting prototypes do we never see?
Many.
Yeah, so many.
All the manufacturers build them constantly.
Drawers and drawers of design concepts, and then hard parts, and then let's try it out and build this. And I want to meet
test reports. Yeah.
Right. I want to meet the guy at Honda who's got that EU 2200 generator incorporated into his little two-wheeler with an electric hub motor and a reservoir, a battery reservoir to help him get down the road. Somebody did it. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. We appreciate you being with us. Share this with your friends. And anything else, Kevin? I guess we'll just see you next time.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.